Can the Maple Leafs take advantage of a Flames team in turmoil? We'll discuss on today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. I gotta tell you, Dave, I use the Game Time app, but I'm going to the Jays game later tonight with a buddy of mine. So shout out to Game Time. Thank you for the $20 off. And if anybody wants to get a couple of bucks, basically a beer or two paid for, you got to download the Game Time app, use the code LOCKEDONNHL, and you get 20 bucks off your first purchase. Lots to get into today, Dave. I mean, there's the ownership stake that we talked about yesterday that sounds like Larry Tanenbaum might be selling some of his ownership. Not all of it, but some of it. We'll talk about that a little bit today. But what's becoming increasingly concerning, I think, for a lot of these Canadian markets is it appears that no one wants to play in Canada at this point. I mean, you talk about what we heard a couple of weeks back in Winnipeg, and now it doesn't appear that DeBrincat isn't all that thrilled about signing long-term in Ottawa. And then today, you hear a quartet of players not too happy about their situation in Calgary and don't plan on signing long-term. I mean, what's going on here where just guys don't want to be in the Great White North?
Yeah, it's a little perplexing. I mean, the Winnipeg situation, you got some players who have obviously not performed and the team hasn't performed, and then they get a new coach that's a bit of a hard ass, so that situation's kind of taken a turn one way. Calgary one, I mean, we've known that it's been hard for Calgary to keep free agents because, you know, there's certain things. Living in Calgary, I haven't heard any bad things about living in Calgary. It's not that expensive when you look at other Canadian cities. But we also know that the arena they play out of is not exactly top notch. And for a lot of these guys that come from the States, living in Canada has its challenges for family, for a lot of things. But I mean, look, this is something you sign up for in a lot of ways. And, you know, I've seen a lot of other players make it work in Canada. I don't know what exactly has become a new issue that all of a sudden now guys are running away from Canada, especially Calgary. Like, if you're a Flames fan right now, oh, this is not a good time right now.
No, it's really not. And it's so bizarre too. Like 2 years ago, I looked at that Calgary Flames team when they went on that run and they lost to Edmonton in the second round. But I thought to myself, man, this is a pretty good group they got here. And you saw Tkachuk and Gaudreau, they were playing very, very good hockey. You had Markstrom playing at a Vezina level. They had a really solid defensive group and you know, some other really good players. Lindholm, you know, was a point per game player. And who else did they have at that point? Mangiapane had like a 36 goal season. Like, they had a lot going for them just 2 years ago. You fast forward, they made that trade last summer. It did not go well. Jonathan Huberdeau's numbers fell off a cliff. The coach, everyone turned on the coach, Daryl Sutter. He ends up getting fired. Brad Treliving decides that he doesn't want to stick around in Calgary anymore. He's here in Toronto now. And all of a sudden, you know, it sounds like a whole bunch more players want to leave the team and leave the organization and don't plan on sticking it out long term. Frank Saravalli of Daily Faceoff just like basically ripped out the hearts of a lot of Flames fans with one single tweet today, or a thread of tweets rather, within the span of a few minutes. I don't know if you want to bring up that tweet that we have here from Frank Saravalli, but basically he came out with a succession of about 3 or 4 tweets that essentially said, Noah Hanifin has indicated he does not plan to sign an extension. Doesn't want to be there. And Elias Lindholm. Yeah, there's been a big pitch here, but sounds like he doesn't really want to re-sign in Calgary. He's leaning that way. And then more. Told Mikael Backlund is also leaning toward not re-signing in Calgary. A guy who's been a staple with that team for 15 years. And then a little bit later on, we heard that it sounds as though Tyler Tiffoli also not interested in re-signing with the Calgary Flames next season and would prefer a trade out of the organization. That's like within 2 years, how different. Yeah, there's the Elliot Friedman trade thing at the word this afternoon. Calgary has made Tyler Tiffoli available for trade. He's got $4.25 million, one more year left on the deal, and had 34 goals last season. So good value for a guy, good winger, good sniper. So, we'll see what they can end up doing. But it's just so weird how 2 years ago, this team went from being, okay, they looked like they could potentially be the front runner in Canada to end that 30-year cup drought. And now all of a sudden it's just falling apart at the seams. Nobody wants to stick around. And all of a sudden it's like Huberdeau and Uyghur, like, what the hell do we sign up for 8 years of this nonsense now? Who the heck's going to be with us?
Yeah, that's really the I guess the big struggle is because, with Tkachuk
and Kadri as well.
Oh yeah, I almost forgot about Kadri. Like you saw, Tkachuk and Gaudreau, and this was something that was talked about when those two guys left. Is like, is this opening up, the floodgates for a lot of other players to do the similar things where if they don't like the situation that they're in, how many they're gonna say, all right, I'm not too keen on resigning here. You might as well trade me now before you lose me for nothing. And that's exactly what all these guys are doing. It's just totally bizarre. Like if you're the Flames, like you just said, Tiffoli, that's a 30 goal scorer, right? Elias Lindholm is your number one center. Noah Hanifin is, top three in your top three of defense. I would say now maybe your number
top pair defenseman over there.
Yeah, number two behind Uyghur. Maybe Uyghur's the number one.
I mean, you could flip a coin. I think you could take Hanifin as your number one, but anyways, it's splitting hairs.
And as Servali said, Mikael Backlund's been there for 15 years. Yeah. And this guy's pretty much saying, yeah, I'm done over here. And you also wonder how much is that the pressure of playing in the Canadian market, because we know that's something that's always discussed. How much is also the Flames just haven't gone anywhere? I mean, you said it. Really, the farthest they've gone is the second round. And for a lot of guys, especially when they get to a certain point in their careers, they want to find a way to win. Mikael Backlund's been there 15 years.
I know, but it's just weird because if you look at that team on paper, like that's a really good team. Like Brad Treliving built a real solid team over in Calgary. Like, yeah, we're taking a look at their cap-friendly page right now. Like they have Jonathan Huberdeau, Nazem Kadri, Mangiapane, Backlund, Blake Coleman, Lindholm, Tiffoli. We've got a couple of young guys in Dylan Dubé and Matthew Coronado. Like those are some really, like that's a solid top nine. You've got a blue line with Mackenzie Weegar, Noah Hanifin, Rasmus Anderson, Chris Tanev, Zadorov's a big body. Like they've got a really, really solid group of guys here. And obviously, Jacob Markstrom has been a Vezina caliber goaltender outside of last year for the last 5 seasons. So there's a lot of guys that like it's just a very talented team. And just a lot of guys underperformed last year. And now all of a sudden you take a look and everyone wants out. And it's like, I'm just confused. Like if this is a playoff team on paper, they should be able to do some good things. They got a new head coach in the fold in Ryan Huska. You would think that they would all give it one more kick at the can. But if no one wants to come back and re-sign, this is a way to get to where you want to get to and try and get an extension in place a year prior, I suppose. And, that's what Lindholm wants to do. Sounds like maybe Hanifin, certainly Tiffoli, and sounds like Backlund too. Like I wouldn't be shocked if by the end of the summer, all 4 of these players are not Calgary Flames.
Yeah. I mean, you just know that the worst thing you can do as a front office is allow guys to leave without maximizing their return if you already have a heads up that they don't want to be there. How many people were saying, all those years of Johnny Gaudreau potentially being on the trade block, and then the Flames, deciding to keep him around, figure they can make it work. Then he leaves, and you're just like, well, maybe they should have pulled off that trade because that's something you could have gotten something back for. So, in a lot of ways, I think players nowadays are trying to not just leave teams, up and dry and saying we're just going to leave, but at the same
Yeah.
time, it's like you've already taken away a lot of the leverage by having this out there that you're not going to resign either. So they, in a way, they feel like they might be doing the Flames a favor, but really they're not.
Well, kind of, yeah. You're right to a certain extent, but I also wonder how much of this is because of what Craig Conroy said, and how much of this is being pushed by Craig Conroy, the new GM himself. In his introductory press conference, he talked about the situation with Johnny Gaudreau, and how he was beside himself that it got to a point where he did not return and they got nothing out of him, and he vowed that he wouldn't let that happen again. Well, if all these players are saying, we're not going to sign with you next season, we're leaning towards going to free agency and seeing what's on the market. If he vowed he wasn't going to let that happen again, he was the AGM at the time. Brad Treliving was the general manager, obviously, but he was there. It sounds like potentially, these are players sitting here saying, hey, this is a way that, we can let it be known to our general manager that we're not going to re-sign next year. And it sounds as though he would prefer to deal us away anyway. So let's just get it done. And let's see if, this team can go on a quick retool. Like that's a lot of really talented players. Lindholm, Hanifin, Tiffoli, Backlund. I mean, you could get some pretty good assets for those four guys to be able to do a rather quick retool, whether it's draft picks or, a young roster players or young prospects. You could retool this thing pretty quickly if you're Calgary with those guys, which does lead us into the obvious conversation here on Locked On Leafs is, can the Maple Leafs take advantage of this situation? Why don't we take a quick break? When we get back, we can maybe talk about where the Leafs can come in to play here. Is there a couple of guys who maybe Toronto should have some interest in, and maybe put together a trade package that would make some sense for both sides? We'll do that on the other side. But first, Dave, I have a word from one of our show sponsors.
Yes, today's show is brought to you by Bird Dogs. If you're looking for something that gives you a little more versatility for the summertime, Bird Dogs are definitely something that can do that. They're the stretch khaki shorts designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you the true sculpted look. They do the exact same thing as Lululemons, but fit way better. And they fit better than regular shorts that are made of stiff, restricting cotton. I use it all the time when I go out golfing. That's my, I want something that's going to be comfortable, breathable as well, because they do use anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you dry all day long. So also a great thing that Bird Dogs is doing is if you go to birddogs.com/lockedonnhl, you will receive a free Yeti style tumbler with your order. So go to birddogs.com/lockedonnhl for a free Yeti style tumbler. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you that.
Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. Just a reminder that we have new episodes coming out each weekday, Monday through Friday. So make sure that if you do want to keep up to date with what's going on, not only with the Maple Leafs, but around the NHL, make sure that you are subscribed to the Locked On Leafs podcast, wherever you get your podcast from. Also, of course, on YouTube. And the question of the day that we want to ask on YouTube is, if the Maple Leafs were to inquire with the Calgary Flames of a trade, do you have a trade proposal that you would like to kind of throw down into the comment section below, or a trade target in mind in Calgary that you think could work for the Maple Leafs? Let us know in the comment section down below, because we're about to have that conversation right now. Dave, of those four players, Elias Lindholm, Noah Hanifin, Todd Tiffoli, and Mikael Backlund, any of those names interest you as a potential trade target for the Toronto Maple Leafs?
I mean, Noah Hanifin is one that definitely piques my interest. The Leafs are definitely trying to see if they can overhaul their blue line. And I mean, what better way than to try to get a young, still a young defenseman who can, pretty much. I think he hasn't reached his full potential yet. And you look at what the Leafs blue line have, like he would be an upgrade in a lot of areas on this Leafs blue line. So if he's available, the other thing you have to consider, he does have I think he can put 18s on a no trade clause. So you have to wonder if he's going to put Canadian teams on that, if that's potentially an issue there. I don't think right now. I mean,
has that already kicked in, or does that kick in on July 1?
That is a very good question.
Because he was in the Marner draft, so if Marner's doesn't kick in until July 1st, I'd imagine that Hanifin's probably in a similar boat.
Yeah, I think he has it. So he does have it going into. Actually, he already had it last season.
Okay.
So I think it's probably when his deal was structured that they gave him the trade protection the final 2 years. So he does technically have that list. The 18 he could submit a 18 no trade list. So
he played his draft year. That's why. So he actually played the season. Yeah. So he played a year before Marner.
Yeah, so he's getting to UFA status a lot earlier than Marner too. So that's the other thing you have to consider here for a trade with Hanifin is what's his next contract going to look like, and is that something that the Leafs can fit, right? Like what's that trade kind of look like? But he's definitely someone I have interest in. I've always liked Tyler Toffoli. His age concerns me a little bit. He's getting older, but he just came off a really good season. So I think, if you're looking for someone who's a playoff performer, can bring a different style to your top six, Tiffoli would be that. And then Lindholm, I mean, Lindholm would fit so well with this Leafs team. My issue is it's going to cost a lot, not only to get him, but his next contract. There was speculation thinking even Ellie Friedman say he could be looking for Bo Horvat money, which is like 8 by 8.5. If I'm not mistaken, is what Horvat got over in New York. So if you're the Leafs, that's another big ticket, and you're likely going to be sending a big ticket to do any sort of trade right now with Calgary.
Who would you rather pay $8.5 million to? Let's say it's a 6-year deal. Elias Lindholm or William Nylander?
I would. Some people might hate me for saying this, but I would do Lindholm. I understand that Nylander's coming off a really good offensive year, but I think Lindholm's the more versatile player. He can do so many things in this Leafs lineup. He's been a good producer. I know last year was kind of an off year for him, but he also scored 42 goals 2 years ago. There is the offensive ability there. If you pair him with the right player, I think you could unlock his some really good offensive potential there from him. So he's 28, so he's in his prime right now. So he's not, on the wrong side of 30. And yeah, I would prefer Elias Lindholm just because the Leafs need a centerman. They need to find another center, especially in that top 6, and he would be a perfect fit there.
I would tend to agree with you. And another reason is he's also very proficient defensively. Like he was the runner-up for the Selke a year ago. Like literally the runner-up to Patrice Bergeron. It's Patrice Bergeron and then Elias Lindholm. So if you can add that as a second-line center in behind Austin Matthews, I think you're laughing. You could move Tavares over to the wing, or you could have a big 3 down the middle if you really want to. I think that would be a pretty good 1-2 punch with Matthews and Elias Lindholm. And I think that'd be a number that the Maple Leafs would probably be willing to get to. But if you could pick which one you could trade for, Lindholm or Hanifin, do you have a preference?
I would probably say Lindholm. I just think I've seen more from him in what he has done that I feel more comfortable with him. I'm not saying Hanifin's not like I wouldn't want Hanifin. If I had my preference, I would probably say Lindholm. My only issue again is what's his next contract going to look like.
Yeah, I think if you're trading for either of these two, you probably would do it with the assumption that the same way that Bo Horvat did and the same way that Matt Tkachuk did, you probably have a predetermined figure in mind in what an extension would look like for both of these guys. I'm trying to big brain like a massive blockbuster trade because once upon a time, Brad Treliving made a blockbuster trade to acquire both Lindholm and Hanifin. Now, I'm curious what they could possibly do to make that happen. Now, I believe that was what Dougie Hamilton who went the other way as part of the trade package to bring him in and some other pieces. So I'm trying to imagine like what would a trade have to look like from Toronto's end to get both of those guys because both of them would be a massive get for Brad Treliving and the Toronto Maple Leafs. And hey, how often do we see when a GM ends up in a different place, the first spot he goes looking to try and build up his new team is his old team and some of the guys that he liked and he wants to get back into the fold in his new club. So I would think that Lindholm and Hanifin, I mean, both would be perfect. If you can get one of those two, I mean, obviously that would be a great addition to this team. But like if you had to big brain it, what do you think a deal would cost for both of those guys? Knowing that neither are re-signing, right? Like they pretty much do have to trade them and they're kind of handcuffed. But you would think that like would one of the big four have to go if you're getting both of those guys in a trade?
I think a lot of people are going to be putting William Nylander into that trade. My concern is, will William Nylander want to sign in Calgary? Because there's no way Calgary is taking on William Nylander with any assurance that he's going to sign there.
Bill from Calgary?
I know he is from Calgary, but it's
Born
to be from.
in the Calgary hospital, my friend. Does he want to go home?
That's the real. That's going to, I think, be the complicated part of that deal. I mean, if the Leafs would make Nylander available, and it's kind of apparent to Nylander that he doesn't have much of a future in Toronto, maybe that's something you can that would help. Maybe move that trade along. But I just don't know if that's what Calgary is going to want, and I think Calgary is probably going to want more assurance that they're going to get something back because you look at their roster, that's not a rebuilding roster. That's a roster that still wants to compete. And they're going to want guys that not going to want to be there, but are going to help this team compete. Nylander helps with getting a good player back, just like they've done with all the other trades. It's just, can they get the assurance that they're going to be able to keep him long term?
Can I throw a wild name at you?
All right, go ahead.
This is silly season. Like this is what we do here, okay? This is silly season at this point. Morgan Riley.
Yeah. I mean, he does have a no movement clause, so that's something that the Leafs would have to get him.
But he's a Western Canadian boy, right? So like to be closer to home, perhaps like that's the only reason why I'm thinking, maybe he would. And for Calgary, it's like, okay, he's under contract, like he's not going anywhere. He's going to be here, and he's going to be a Flame for a long time. That was just a random name that kind of popped into my head right now as I'm trying to put together some potential trade packages. I mean, you can look at the first round pick, 28th overall. I mean, do you package together like Robertson, Liljegren? Is that enough to get both of them? I don't think so. You would probably need to have one of those big forward players in there to get one of those guys. But like, could you get a first round pick and Nick Robertson for a Hanifin? I mean, you might be able to swing a deal like that. That's something that I'd be interested in doing.
Yeah, I mean, I would too, because at this point, Nick Robertson needs to play. Calgary is going to be going with some of the younger guys in their new transition mode. And that first round pick, it's good to always to stack the cupboards. I get that. But if you're going to get someone that's going to help you now, and if you can sign Hanifin down the road, that pick doesn't mean anything. No. It could mean something 5 years down the road.
I'd much rather have a 26-year-old, potential top pair, certainly top four defenseman, guaranteed, and have him sign an extension here in Toronto for the next, 6 years or so, than pray and hope that first round pick at 28th overall pans out. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of picks. I was reading something online today that said something to the effect of from the 20th to 50th pick, like it's a crapshoot. Like all those players in that draft are all basically the same. And it's actually smarter for teams who are going for it and in win now mode to trade those picks, late first rounders for, actual NHL talent because you're guaranteed to get something out of them. Whereas those late first years, it's not a guarantee. Once you slide past the top 20, the odds of that pick becoming a legitimate NHLer who plays 100 plus games in the league significantly starts to decline. So if you can turn it into a bona fide player like a Lindholm or a Hanifin, it would make some sense if you were the Maple Leafs. And if the Calgary Flames, if they feel like they're in a situation where they got all these guys who are looking to move on, they got to do a quick reset, retool, get picks, prospects, young players, whatever it may be. It might be a match made in heaven in a way. And obviously, Brad Treliving and Craig Conroy have a terrific relationship from their time in Calgary. So I truly believe that there is something to be done here with the Maple Leafs and the Calgary Flames, whether it's Lindholm or it's Hanifin. I think that there's a strong possibility that trade talks are happening currently, and maybe something could get done, prior to draft night.
Yeah, I think if the Leafs do need to find a way to improve, and given the way that they're with free agency, there's not much out there. I still think the trade route is the best way to do it. And we know Brad Treliving is not afraid to go out and swing big on a trade. And as you said, he's the one that brought both guys to Calgary in the first place. So he finds ways to package multiple guys together. And if he identifies a player, he will find a way to go and get them.
Yep. Let us know down below in the comments section. Do you have a trade that would work? Calgary and Toronto. What's a trade that could land Lindholm or Hanifin or both? If you want to get real spicy, let us know in the comment section down below. All right, on the other side, let's get into this weird well, it's not a weird story, but it's kind of a surprising story of Larry Tanenbaum potentially looking to offload some shares of his MLSE stock. So we'll talk about that on the other side. Before we get into it, though, let me tell you guys about one of today's show sponsors, and it's our friends at Game Time. Buying tickets to your favorite event shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over tickets and start getting hyped for the fun that you will have. Game Time is the place for last-minute ticket deals. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. You can get images of your seat before you buy them so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds. 2 taps and you're set. Tickets are directly sent to your phone, so you'll never have to dig through your email. Snag the tickets without any stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. We got some interesting news popped up yesterday about the Maple Leafs owner Larry Tanenbaum potentially looking to offload some shares of MLSE stock. Sportico is reporting that Larry Tanenbaum looking to offload them to the OMERS pension plan. OMERS is an acronym that stands for Ontario Municipal Employees Retirement System. And Larry Tanenbaum currently owns 25% of MLSE, and he's looking to offload. We don't know exactly how much, but some of that stock, some of his stake within MLSE, which was given an $8 billion valuation for the purposes of this negotiation going on between OMERS and Larry Tanenbaum. Kind of insane that MLSE is now an $8 billion entity.
And I understand there's a lot of entities involved when you look at the Leafs, the Raptors, but then I keep forgetting about TFC, the arena, right? Scotiabank Arena, and there's also real estate developments that MLSE has gone involved.
Is Scotiabank Arena owned by MLSE?
I believe that's the only one they own because
Do
there
they
was
not own the? They don't own the soccer field.
no that's they run it, but it's the city that owns it. So they're like
Oh,
they operate it just like
gotcha.
Coca-Cola Coliseum. They operate Coca-Cola Coliseum or formerly Rico Coliseum, but they operate it. So yeah, I think that like I was trying to figure out how do they equal all that to $8 billion, and I forgot there's like a bunch of other things that are in under the MLSE umbrella that go beyond the sports teams themselves. But $8 billion, so it equals out to $2 billion worth of equity that Tannenbaum owns. He's not
Yeah,
obviously going to sell all 25% because I think it'd be ludicrous if he were to do all 25%. But to me, I wonder if he's got another venture he's looking into potentially, and he needs to offload some of what he owns in MLSE in order to go there. Like people are wondering why would Larry Tanenbaum do this? That to me is one of the first things that came to mind is like he's got something else that he wants to do, and he's got to be able to sell some of that off, or the offer right now is really good and he wants to see how if he can cash in because that's a lot of money.
maybe he just wants to step back. Just step back and enjoy the rest of it. Like, how old's Larry Tannenbaum at this point? Like, he's not a young guy anymore. I don't
No,
really.
Uncle Larry is not. I've met. I
78 years old.
Yeah. So I've seen Larry Tanenbaum. You can tell he is a 78-year-old. I hate to say it, but a lot of owners, he's like a lot of those owners that have put in a lot of time. Like he's not the owner that is hands off. He is the governor of the Raptors. He is a part of the governor, like of the governors for the NHL with the Leafs. I know he chairs the governors of all the NBA teams. So like he's not an owner that just sits back and collects a paycheck. He puts in work, and we know that he's had some he's had to like get his hands into a lot of things, right, and kind of steer the ship with that. The interesting thing here that was noted was that if Tannenbaum is looking to sell it, Rogers and Bell have like first say of whether they want him to do that. Like they'll probably either say, yeah, go ahead and do it, or no, I think we'd rather, buy it ourselves, which I don't know if that's something that they're considering to do, but that's another thing I think that gets missed here is that they could tell Larry, no, we're not allowing you to do this right now.
Well, so they have first right to purchase like they can buy him out essentially, I think is it. So they can't force him to remain as an owner, right? It's
They have the
either
first right of refusal to purchase any shares. So
right. So Larry essentially it's like you guys can buy the rest of this, buy
yeah,
however much stock I want, or I'm going to sell it to these people.
yeah,
So,
exactly.
and they could say, no, we'll just take it actually instead. But yeah, I would imagine that if this is getting out there, that conversation probably would have been had already
Yeah,
between Bell and Rogers and Larry Tannenbaum, and he would have just sold it to them if that was it. And this wouldn't have became public. I would imagine that because they own 37.5% each, and then Tannenbaum owns the remaining 25% of MLSE. I would imagine that they want to just keep with that stake, and that's why this Omer's pension plan is now kind of coming into the fold. Although the last time a pension plan owned MLSE, it did not go very well, if you recall, with the teachers' pension plan back in the day. But I mean, it wouldn't be, it'd be a very small ownership stake. I don't know how much say that they would really have in what goes on. They just hope to grow their pension plan essentially as the valuation goes from 8 billion and continues to ascend, because that's essentially what keeps happening with every single sports franchise. It's insane the amount of money that's going on in sports right now. It's wild. I don't know if you saw this in the NBA. Chris Middleton, guard for the Milwaukee Bucks, turned down a player option of $41 million. What the hell is a guy like that turning down $41 million? Like, he's not going to get that money from anybody going forward, first of all.
likely not. I think what so many guys do this is that they do it with the idea that they can renew for an even bigger number.
Well, a
Like,
longer contract, so
yeah,
like more dollars, but could could have waited a year and done the exact same thing. Probably take that 41 sheets and then next year sign me to a 3-4 year deal. It's just crazy the amount of money that's in
oh,
sports and in basketball and in particular. And I don't know, man. Hopefully hockey gets to that point. At sometime that was the hope when ESPN got into the fold and TNT with the U.S. broadcast rights, and then COVID kind of hit a little snag there, and we've yet to see the benefits of a ballooned cap since then. Even this year, it's only going to be 1 million extra as it was a year ago. So remaining with that flat cap, but going forward, expecting $4 or $5 million jump year after year. So hopefully the Maple Leafs or the NHL can start reaping the benefits. I don't think we'll ever see an NHLer making $41 million. Especially like the thing is like Chris Middleton is he even a top 50 player in the NBA right now? Like I don't even know if he is, and he's got a $41 million. It's just ridiculous. I remember one time I think it was like Timothy Mozgov signed a contract, it's like
oh,
4 years, 71 million bucks. I'm like, this guy makes more money than Connor McDavid. Like it was insane. I'm like, this dude's off the bench and he's making more money than legitimately the highest paid hockey player in the NHL. It's crazy, crazy. But
if Chris Middleton signs the next like a new deal that many are expecting, it could be worth over like 54 million a season. It's like
per season,
per season. It's like 5 years, $272 million.
in what world is Chris Middleton worth that much money?
To the
Anyways, this ain't locked on.
he could be to the Milwaukee Bucks or to another team. I asked my buddies. They said there are teams dumb enough to do it because they feel he's still a decent enough of a player to deserve that money. I don't.
Decent. You use the word decent. Decent players aren't worth $50 million. It's insane. A year. A year. Anyways, this ain't Locked On Bucks. It's Locked On Leafs. So we'll get off the basketball talk.
Go to
But
Locked
just
On
goes
Bucks
to
to find
show,
out their thoughts on this if you want to know whether or not Chris Middleton is worth that type of money.
yeah, it just goes to show how much money is in sports.
Yeah.
And that $8 billion valuation. The Leafs are a big part of it. I don't think the Raptors are too far off. Also, shout out to Grady Dick, the latest draft pick by the Toronto Raptors. You see the suit that guy wore to draft night? Dude,
He had to have known he wore red.
he knew. He knew he was going to be a Raptor at the end of the night. He knew.
Can't confirm he's also been followed by Drake already, so he's fully entrenched with the Raptors culture now.
I've already thought of what my basketball fantasy name is going to be next year. Dick in a box in one. Yeah, it's good. That's what it's going to be. I apologize for all the PG listeners out there for that.
I thought it was going to be big energy. Like
Could also be that. But that's another one that could potentially be it. Anyways, we've gone completely off the rails with all this basketball talk in the last 5 minutes of this show. But the draft just happened. So congrats to Grady Dick and the latest Toronto Raptors. I'm sure Sean Woodley will be going hard on that. I will not say his name after using that word. But man, there are a lot of people going to have fun with that on the Toronto Sports Talk airwaves tomorrow. Locked On Raptors will be one of them with our guy, Sean Woodley. So make sure that you check him out if you want to hear about Grady Dick. But that'll do it for us here today on the show. We got to wrap this thing up. We're going. Let's go. It's just getting silly at this point. Thank you so much for listening to the show and supporting us. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all podcast platforms to receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti. Go ahead, leave a like on this video. Comment down below your thoughts on a potential Leafs Flames trade. Do you have one? Is there someone who interests you? Let us know in the comment section down below. Enjoy your weekends. We'll be back with another episode for y'all on Monday. It's draft week. It's free agent week. We'll start getting pretty hardcore into the draft coverage on Monday. So be sure to return to find out our thoughts on what we think the Leafs should do with pick number 28. So we'll discuss that more on Monday. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.